Deshaun Watson and the NFL agreeing to an 11-game suspension, $5 million fine. The decision is in. This is it. This is finally final, as you said in our pre-show meeting. Deshaun Watson, 11 games, $5 million fine. His first game back, Houston Texans at NRG Stadium over on Kirby.
Think that was intentional?
I don't. Do you think it was intentional?
I think from a league marketing perspective, I think it at least crossed the right people's minds. I don't know whether they had a say-so in it or not. It just seems it seems more than ironic that coming back from suspension from the team that you left unceremoniously, that your first game is going to be coming back to the scene of the crimes, so to speak, to play in Houston against your former team. It just seems to be too planned to just say, oh, it was just one of those things.
Brendan and I were talking about that, and we were on two different sides of it. He feels that it certainly was something that was at least on the mind of Deshaun Watson. Perhaps the NFL also, hey, maybe we budge a little bit. Maybe we budge a game to get him back for that game at NRG Stadium. The NFL likes to do some quirky things every now and then to get eyeballs. They get plenty of ratings, though. I don't know if something this serious and with the gravity of this, if they were thinking Browns, Texans, the return of Deshaun Watson, when they're trying to punish Deshaun Watson.
We need to look at that week of schedule of games because it instantaneously becomes the most talked about game of that week.
Oh, absolutely.
But
Deshaun Watson coming back, period, would have been the most talked about game that week.
But you're right. But it takes it up to it ramps it up even more when you know that he's coming back to Houston, coming back to play his old team, and just all the other irony that goes with it. I just feel like if it wasn't a week in which you had major matchups going across the league, that it might have factored in even more. That because they could have said it because it's such a quirky number. Although it's completely Cody Stutes to say, well, you know what, you don't have 10, you have 11 because there's 11 men on the field. So it makes perfect sense. There should be 11 game suspension.
It's a football number for a football suspension.
But normally you don't hear an 11 game. You normally hear 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever. It was a little bit different, but I wouldn't put it past the league to not have thought about it.
Well, the reason you get to a quirky number and an odd number is because you are at 12 and Deshaun Watson in settlement agreements is trying to lessen it as much as he possibly can. Look, I look at the suspension. We knew that the NFL, before Judge Sue Robinson's decision on the 6 games originally, although she buried him with the report that she put out. Didn't bury him with the suspension length, but buried him with her report, which I think was advantage NFL whenever you kind of get down to it. But the NFL in their settlement offering was offering 12 games, $10 million. So we knew that's what the NFL was willing to do before we even had a decision from the judge, Sue Robinson. We know that the NFL's threat, after they appealed it and they hired their own appeal person to oversee the whole process, their threat was an indefinite suspension, which is really a full-year suspension, he implies, for reinstatement. So that was the fear that they hung over the head of Deshaun Watson, and because of that, I believe that they had Deshaun Watson over the barrel. So Deshaun, because he doesn't want to be suspended the entire year, because he doesn't want to have his entire salary taken away, doesn't want to miss football for 2 entire seasons, he had to give in to the NFL. He didn't want to accept their full original proposal and their full original settlement offer of 12 games, $10 million. So they budged 1 game and they budged the fine, $5 million. I think this was Deshaun getting as much as he possibly could to get the NFL off their stance. And at the end of the day, because there was a year suspension looming over Deshaun Watson, he got a little bit, not very much, just a very little bit for the NFL to come down a hair.
Yeah, no, I think when you and I were talking about it too, I think that he won on the money, but he lost on the games. Because I think when we were trying to, and we pretty much hit it though, because we said it was going to be between 10 and 12, and right there, smack dab in the middle, 11, and then between the 5 and the 10, I mean, I thought it would be 7.5.
Yeah.
But 5, he ends up winning a little bit by getting it down to 5. But I think to your point, the one thing that he didn't want to do was he knew, and the league knew, that if they did try and push for the full season, that the Players Association was going to jump back in, re-engage, and it was going to be a lawsuit. And from a Deshaun perspective, separate from whatever the Players Association wanted to do, he didn't want to be on the hook for another big legal bill from Rusty.
I don't think he wanted to tick off the NFLPA, Goodell. To be honest with you.
That because he already did, right?
Yeah, he wants to be in good faith with them.
Well, but also because of the fact you took the new collective bargaining agreement and basically threw the clause that you agreed upon with the league about transparency and having third-party arbiters.
Yeah.
And then you threw it out the window on the very first chance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're probably right, so that they don't run into just huge stumbling blocks the next time there's a negotiation to him, because you've got to see in good faith this whole disagreement through.
Hey, guys, back to the video in just 1 minute. Before that, I want to tell you about Fitz Roofing. If you got a leaky roof or need a full roof replacement on your business or your home, or you want to get something done around the yard or maybe something around the house, they have the best warranties in the business, the best ratings, and the best service. They're going to take care of you every step of the way. Fitz Roofing, making a difference, one home at a time.
For a lot of reasons, it didn't make sense for this to last any longer. And even the other thing, from an imaging perspective, if there's anything to salvage from Deshaun's perspective, with every passing day that this was hanging out there, it was just more of a bad look for him and his camp.
Both sides had something to lose in this, right? For Deshaun Watson, he had what was at stake for him was the fact that he could be suspended the entire year if the NFL got their way, or if at least it went to the appellate process with the Goodell appointing the own appeal guy that they wanted to hire. He was going to do what Roger Goodell wanted. So the NFL used that as the leverage hanging over Deshaun Watson in these negotiations. Deshaun Watson's leverage and the NFLPA's leverage was, look, don't make us mad. Don't awake a sleeping giant known as the NFLPA whenever we have a pretty good working agreement right now. We got a new CBA. We have a third-party judge, although that we saw how important that was and how much value that had. But if you get them to settle, well, the NFLPA can't complain. They can't complain because they agreed to the settlement. So I think that that's what both sides had at stake. I didn't think it was going to be more than the NFL's original offer of 12 games, $10 million. I thought it would be less than that. I didn't know what. I think I said 10 games, $7.5 million. This is right around there. This is about what we predicted.
And yeah, we met in the middle.
Games,
I said
12,
12, you said 10. We both agreed to 7.5. He got away with 5. I think overall, though, when you factor in how much he saved with the Browns doing the extension and only making $1 million this year, the extra 5 still doesn't hit him that hard, because of the fact that you got to believe, in estimating, the majority of these cases, he probably settled for $100,000 or less.
No clue, but probably.
But probably in the ballpark, so you're thinking a couple million there. But from what he could have lost and how damaging this could have been with that big contract, the fact that he got off to where he got off to, literally not figuratively,
right,
that he's probably happy to wash his hands of this and just move forward, because it could have been a whole hell of a lot worse.
You're also kind of like, your point all along was that the NFL wasn't going to be too thrilled with the way that the Browns backloaded that contract. Although Cleveland does do that. It's not unique to only Deshaun Watson. It just looked very fishy because you knew a suspension was coming for Deshaun Watson. So this is the NFL. Okay, we're going to slap a $5 million fine on top of the suspension. So it's a way to kind of like, okay, you're trying to recircumvent a standard contract in the NFL. You're trying to just have the $1 million in year one, where you have an 11-game suspension versus the $1 million you're getting, versus if you were getting paid $20 million, it's going to cost you a lot more. So this is the NFL saying, look, you're not going to work around us. You're not going to screw over us. We're still going to fine you an appropriate amount. So I think that in terms of like the negotiation and the lawyering, you want to eliminate all the sexual misconduct and the real heinous stuff that actually happened here. It wasn't going to be more than 12 games, $10 million if they settled. And the NFL didn't come off their ledger a whole lot. Now we know, because the Houston Texans own the Browns draft pick next year and the year after that as well, first rounder and more. What is the Browns' outlook? This looks like Jacoby Brissett, more than likely, unless they make a move for Jimmy Garoppolo. They're going to be with Jacoby Brissett for 11 games, without Deshaun Watson for 11 games. Who will Deshaun Watson be when he returns? Who knows? They look great in preseason game number 1. What is the Cleveland Browns' outlook with this latest information? What do we think that Cleveland could be this upcoming season?